Well, Arthur Ray Hansen II of Huntsville, Alabama, has become the first Trump follower to be accused of following Donald Trump's implicit instructions to threaten the lives of people involved in the arrest and prosecution of Donald Trump. He delivered those threats in the stupidest possible Trumpian way by leaving voicemail messages for Georgia's Fulton County Sheriff, Patrick Labatt, and a separate voicemail message for Fulton County District Attorney Fani Willis. As soon as he hung up that phone, he was on his way to eventually being arrested and charged with the federal crime of transmitting interstate threats. And when I read you the voice messages that he left in a moment, you can reasonably conclude that he is very likely going to federal prison for those two phone calls. If Arthur Ray Hansen II faces a judge in a sentencing hearing, the defendant or his lawyer will definitely tell the judge that he had no intention of carrying out his threats. And that won't be enough to save him from a prison sentence, but it will probably, and this is just a guess, it will probably be true. More than 99% of death threats are delivered by people who have no intention of carrying them out. I don't want to minimize death threats in any way because the threats themselves are serious crimes. But no one I know is more relaxed about death threats than I am. The only person I ever knew who was more relaxed about death threats than I am is my father, who gave me my first formative lesson in death threats when I was in first grade. My father was a Boston police officer who worked his way through college and law school in night school and got his first big break as a lawyer in what was then the crime of the century, the first time bank robbers stole over $1 million. It was the famous Brinks robbery in Boston that over the following decades became the subject of several movies. My father represented some of the 11 defendants in that case, all of whom were found guilty. And then years later, when the appeals process was finally exhausted, my father made a very unusual motion in court to have some of the evidence in the case returned to him, evidence that was taken from the trunk of the car of one of his clients during the arrest that was never linked to the crime. It was $5,000 in nickels, dimes, and quarters in what appeared to be unmarked bank bags. Now, certainly suspicious stuff, but never linked to that crime. The prosecution was very surprised by the motion. They weren't accustomed to having convicted bank robbers say, "Give me the money back that you found in the trunk of my car." But eventually, my father prevailed, and he walked out of the Suffolk County Courthouse one day to the glow of flashbulbs, carrying some of the bags with the $5,000 in nickels, dimes, and quarters, which he brought home that night, dropped on the living room floor, where the kids got to dig in as if they were Halloween bags of candy and grab a fistful. And then the phone rang. My father went into his small cubbyhole of an office off the living room, closed that sliding door, and then we heard the yelling. And no one could yell like my father. He repeatedly said, "You know where I live, come to my house right now." And he said it in a way that sounded like a threat to the person he was speaking to. It had the ring of, "Come to my house right now and I'll knock your head off," that sort of thing. When he emerged from his little office, he was completely unperturbed. His gear shift from anger to smile was the fastest I've ever seen. And of course, we all wanted to know what happened, what that call was about. He said, it was just a telephone commando. That wasn't good enough, so my mother asked more. And he said, "The guy says that it's his money. If I don't go to the corner of Hallett Street at midnight tonight and give it to him, he's going to kill me." Suddenly, my brothers and I were all living in a movie scene, and we were all scared, but scared only for the number of seconds my father left in the air before saying, "If he was serious, he never would have called." And then We all knew for an absolute fact that it was a phony death threat because my father just said so. And in those days, for us, that was good enough. And so when I got my first death threats for saying something that someone didn't like on TV in the 1990s, I didn't mention it to anyone. That's not an approach I recommend, but I'm offering this personal perspective tonight in the hope that it might take your anxiety level down just a bit, and only a bit, on the issue of Donald Trump-inspired death threats, because it is very likely that there will be more of them. And it will always remain statistically likely that they are not threats that include the intent to deliver the promises of those threats. I'm going to read you both of the threats that are now charged crimes against Arthur Ray Hansen II of Huntsville, Alabama. And keep in mind as I read them that he had over 2 months to act on his own threats, and he did not do a thing. Nothing. Shortly before Donald Trump was indicted in Georgia, Arthur Ray Hansen II, according to federal prosecutors, quote, called the Fulton County Government Customer Service line twice and left 2 voicemails, the first for Sheriff Labatt, the second for District Attorney Willis. In his message for the sheriff, Hansen made statements that included, if you think you're going to take a mugshot of my president, Donald Trump, and it's going to be okay, you're going to find out that after you take that mugshot, some bad expletives probably going to happen to you. If you take a mugshot of the president and you're the reason it happened, some bad expletives going to happen to you. I'm warning you right now before you expletive up your life and get hurt real bad. Whether you got an expletive badge or not ain't going to help you none, and you going to get expletived up. You keep expletiving with my president. In Hansen's message for the district attorney, he made statements that included, watch it when you're going to the car at night, when you're going into the house. Watch everywhere that you're going. I would be afraid if I were you, because you can't be around people all the time that are going to protect you. There's going to be moments when you're going to be vulnerable. When you charge Trump on that 4th indictment, anytime you're alone, be looking over your shoulder, and what you put out there, expletive, comes back at you 10 times harder. And don't ever forget it. Arthur Ray Hansen II of Huntsville, Alabama, is 59 years old. He is, like every Trump supporter who has committed violence for Donald Trump or threatened to commit violence for Donald Trump, profoundly and irreversibly stupid. He is a terrorist. Those phone calls were intended to deliver, at minimum, terror into the lives of Sheriff Labatt and District Attorney Willis and their families and the people they work with. If Arthur Ray Hansen II faces a judge in a sentencing hearing, his lawyer will definitely blame Donald Trump for those phone calls in the same way that January 6 defendants' lawyers have blamed Donald Trump for their behavior. And on that point, the criminal defense lawyer will be telling the truth. Judges in all of the Trump cases, with the exception of the Florida federal judge who was appointed by Donald Trump, are considering how to stop Donald Trump from, in effect, picking up the telephone and putting it in the hands of the Arthur Ray Hansen IIs out there who are ready to spread Trump terror in the world. The New York judge in the Trump civil fraud case has already fined Donald Trump twice for violating that judge's gag order, barring Donald Trump from verbally attacking court personnel. And in Washington, D.C., federal judge Tanya Chutkan on Sunday night reinstated a gag order on Donald Trump that she had suspended while Trump was appealing the gag order. An hour after Judge Chutkan reinstated the gag order on Sunday night, Donald Trump posted, I called Bill Barr dumb, weak, slow moving, lethargic, gutless, and lazy, a rhino who couldn't do the job. I was tough on him in the White House for good reasons. So now this moron says about me to get even, his verbal skills are limited. Bill Barr is a loser. Judge Chutkan's gag order bars Donald Trump from attacking witnesses in the case in which Donald Trump was charged with crimes leading up to and on January 6th. His Attorney General, William Barr, is going to be a witness against him in that case. And then Donald Trump posted through the night, last night, at 1:05 a.m., radical left judge taking away my right to free speech. Judge Chutkan's gag order does not bar Donald Trump from attacking the judge. 7 minutes later, at 1:12 a.m., Donald Trump posted, remember, crooked Joe Biden and his radical left thugs waited 3 years to bring these indictments. Judge Chutkan's gag order does bar Donald Trump from attacking the prosecutors in this case, who, in this post, Donald Trump was calling radical left thugs. At 4:24 a.m., Donald Trump reposted that same radical left thugs post. In addition to the 2 violations of the gag order in these posts, we see a chart of Donald Trump's insomnia, a condition he has admitted to for many, many years. The effects of insomnia are cumulative and get worse and worse over time. Donald Trump got a maximum of 3 hours sleep last night. How that affected his performance today, we have no idea since he did nothing public today. But for a presidential candidate who is constantly accusing Democratic candidate Joe Biden, 3 years older than him, of being too old, it is worth noting that the effects of insomnia, according to the Mayo Clinic, are not what anyone should be hoping for in a president. Irritability, depression, and anxiety, difficulty paying attention, focusing on tasks or remembering, increased errors or accidents. That's the man who most Republican voters tonight want to be president again, and who Arthur Ray Hansen II of Huntsville, Alabama, tried to help by delivering death threats